And we are rolling. Carlisle, thank you for coming back again.
I know I've made a rare appearance and I'm excited to be here. Yeah.
And so, why don't you introduce our amazing guest?
Oh yeah, I'm so pumped about this. So I met Ryan through Twitter, where I meet all the best people. Which is funny because when you're growing up, everyone's like, do not meet strangers on the internet. And that's now exclusively how I meet everyone. So somewhere
Same.
along the way, it got tangled up. But no, Ryan has a really awesome story and a really awesome company. And we can get more into that as well. But I thought he would just be a really great guest to have on. And we met in person, I think in like July. And so I just moved to Austin this past Sunday, which is exciting. But we're super pumped to have Ryan on the show and tell his story, talk about his products and stuff like that. He was started. I have my favorite thing. My favorite pajama set I own is one of Ryan's t-shirts. It's literally like it's an organic cotton t-shirt. It is so soft. I sleep in it almost every single night. And I ordered like the largest size, like the extra large. And Ryan texted me and was like, why did you order an extra large? Like, I'm like really short. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, no, it's going to be my new pajama set because we can get, I don't know if we want to get into the science of how dangerous it is to constantly be wearing synthetic fibers and what polyester does to us. But I mean, just in the month or so of switching to sleeping in mostly natural fibers, it's really hard to switch an entire wardrobe. My skin is so much better. Like the body on my skin, I kind of like always felt irritated. And maybe this is because I'm a little strange, but now since I've switched a lot of my wardrobe over, if I put on an outfit that's like all synthetic materials, I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm like, is this just me being like in my head and I know it's bad for me, or I'm like, or are these fabrics literally driving me mentally insane? So yeah, that was a long introduction, but we're happy to have Ryan here.
Well, thank you. I do agree with that too, because even for my bedding and whatnot, I got a wool pillow, all cotton sheets. Yeah, I made sure everything's natural fibers, and I've definitely noticed since making that switch.
Oh, do you have the Woolshire pillow?
Yeah, it's so amazing.
I love those pillows. Those are awesome. I'm
We're doing
literally
it.
like,
We're doing a little ad for them. I love it because I love them.
oh, they're great.
Yeah,
I
they're
mean, I
awesome.
bring my I bring my pillow everywhere. Um, I'm like a little kid with their like stuffed animal. I'm like, I need my I need my wool pillow. It helps my allergies.
You know what's funny to me as a mom listening to you and seeing you as an adult? I see no difference between the little girl that refused to wear polyester pajamas. I had to buy her silk pajamas.
She knew.
She did not like the way that they felt. So I think that's really funny.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
And so we'll talk more about your merchandise and how it's all organic and all that. But if you could just I recently watched a video of you on Tyro Nolan's. It's a brand new account, and anyone that wants to go support a young man who's starting out a new podcast, he did a 2 hour interview with you. And then I know the Meat Mafia has also just done a 2 hour or more video with you that's coming out soon. And you tell your whole in-depth story. We only have an hour today. So can you give us just like a little short version of how you got really started in Twitter that actually saved your life, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess I can take it back to the start of the pandemic. So obviously the whole world shut down, but it was around March or April. I can't remember exactly when that I had received news that my older brother had stage 3 colon cancer, which that obviously took me aback because it was already stage 3. I had never been personally affected by cancer with my family. I had a close friend lose his dad right before he graduated high school, but outside of that, never really, yeah, personally affected me. So whenever I received that news, my anxiety immediately took me to death, essentially. And unfortunately, that eventually came a reality because December of 2020 found out it progressed to stage 4. So I
Yeah.
knew leading up to all of that that I was going to be his caretaker if that happened because he was 5.5 years older than me, essentially the most important person in my life. I mean, we were really close. Very fortunate to have him as my older brother. So the first 6 months of 2021, I took off from work. So I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm from Indiana. So I went back home and yeah, went through all of that hell and essentially watched chemo plus cancer and all of the drugs he was on. I mean, he was literally being tortured alive for those 6 months.
Yeah.
While I was helping taking care of him, I was helping to take care of my mom because she 2 years previously before that she was forced to retire from her job for health reasons. And so my world just flipped upside down so fast.
Oh,
Watch
being a
cancer take
caretaker is so hard.
Mhm.
I mean,
yeah,
I didn't ever have respect for how difficult it was until my dad got sick, but keep going.
no, I mean
I don't think people realize it. Like
Mm-mm.
I've heard so
no,
many people say, "Oh, I'm caring for my mom." And I'm like, "Oh, that's so sweet of you." It is an all-encompassing moving mountains kind of feeling.
very. And I mean, I handled it way worse than my brother, and he was the one that was experiencing all that. But he also, there were so many times I felt so bad for him because he felt so guilty that what he was
Right.
putting me through. But I was reassuring that that's not his fault whatsoever. So yeah, it was really challenging. And especially with this type of stuff, it's just literally the most helpless feeling in the world because I was helping him with little minute things because he was very helpless. But I mean, I felt like I was barely scratching the surface of trying to help him. So
Yeah.
he passed away June 11th of 2021, which happened to be 3 days before his 33rd birthday.
Mm.
And yeah, so that was really difficult. I quit my job from IBM shortly after, whenever I returned back to Austin, and was pretty much a recluse for the later half of 2021. But then going back to how you're saying with Twitter, that was I guess, the first decision I made to really start fixing my life essentially because my brother was using Twitter whenever I was his caretaker, and I was really surprised by that because he had always been pretty anti social media.
Hmm.
And so I was talking to him about that, and he was using it just for learning because he was a big Bitcoiner, and then there's other things of his interest, and he'd be in those niches. And I realized, oh, that's the utility of Twitter.
Mhm.
Amazing.
So for those later half again of 2021, I've said it before, but I was definitely attending Twitter University to where I was just because at that point in time too, it was also Twitter was really great in terms of consuming content.
Mhm.
It's changed a
Mhm.
lot now, but I'd say then was at its peak. So I was following
Totally.
health, esoteric health, masculinity, femininity, business,
Conspiracy.
money, fitness, that too. But all this amazing accounts, and I was just consuming, unlearning, and learning a lot. And then I started to realize that I could somehow figure my stuff out, and then also overcome all this because there's so many incredible stories being shared on there. I mean, going to the meat mafia, like Brett's, for example, I had found him in
Right.
January of last year. He shared his story of going through ulcerative colitis and healing naturally through all of that. And there's just so many other accounts like that. So I was just thinking, okay, I'm definitely not okay personally, but I know at some point in time I'm gonna be able to overcome this stuff because others can too. So I was just trying different things of what I could be doing with my life, something with Bitcoin or music. But then it was around February of last year, I had heard about regenerative agriculture. I had never heard of that term. And that was really the light bulb moment because I'd realized, like most people in America, so disconnected from our food. I couldn't remember the last time I visited a farm or ranch. It was probably some type of field trip as a kid, but outside of that, never talked to farmers, never went to farmers markets. And so that kind of jump started that journey of, okay, this is something I'm really interested in now and trying to figure all of that world out.
So you saw accounts that had stuff about regenerative farming and ranching, and then you started getting interested in it because of that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
just for clarity.
yeah,
Okay.
so I got really lucky, just stumbled upon just the people I was following and people just shared and all
Mhm.
that. So I'd found this account, Rizoma Field School. Her name's Ashley, and she has this essentially a homestead class, but there's a lot of regenerative agriculture principles and practices that they talked about. So I signed up for that, and that was amazing. So how that was structured, it was 8 weeks long, all online. There was I'm trying to think, there were four instructors, but then so many different guests appeared, gave talks about the stuff that they were doing, whether it's homesteading or actually regenerative agriculture. Because one of the instructors, his name is Jordan Hedberg, and he's a regenerative rancher in Colorado. And so all while I was taking this class, I had this huge road trip planned around America because that was the probably the biggest thing me and my brother would talk about to really keep the hope alive. because I've always been fascinated with traveling and cultures and food. Same for him. And so unfortunately, we obviously never got to do that. And so I started this road trip. And as that was going on, I kind of tweaked that and would add farms and ranches along the way. So I ended up actually visiting Jordan Hedberg and Josh Rayner Gold on Twitter. And I remember visiting Josh Rayner Gold. The first thing we did was butcher chickens and process the whole entire day. And that was my
That's
first ever
awesome.
experience.
Wow.
And I
Talk about being hands-on with your food.
what's also funny too, because I forgot to mention that I was vegan for 2.5 years. And so I switched back to eating meat a year prior to that. So I went from vegan for 2.5 years to a year later cutting chickens' heads off. And but that was so surreal because again, it was just really thinking about our food and actually doing the dirty work. And then
Mhm.
having that fresh chicken, it just added a whole nother meaning to food because obviously without it we perish. And so that started to really get the wheels spinning in my head of, okay, this is definitely where I want to be. And now I got to figure out
Mhm.
what I want to do in the agriculture space. So I continued on this traveling. And then I remembered about this organization, WOOF. So it's an acronym, WWOOF, and it stands for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. And it's this awesome global organization. Essentially, it's kind of like an Airbnb style to where they have their postings online and you can even stay just for a day or however long they ask for. And so I found this farm in Pennsylvania that I applied for 2.5 months and was able to get it. And so, and essentially, what it is, because it's not paid, you get housing and food, you get the bare necessities in exchange for your labor. And so I was able to get that and did that. I think that started in September of last year. And that really jump started my new Twitter journey to where I was sharing all of that. And
Mhm.
I shared my story at that point in time, which is kind of crazy. All the things that have happened since I shared that story, because I shared that full story about being a caretaker and switching to agriculture and everything I want to do with Twitter. That went viral. And I mean, overnight, I think I gained 6 or 7 thousand followers just from that one post.
Dang.
Yeah, it was wild. My notifications were going crazy all day. I remember there's a big Bitcoiner that I'm a fan of asked me to go on his podcast. Whenever he messaged me, I turned my laptop off and had to go for a walk because I was just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
But then at that same time, as I started sharing, that really made me realize that people really want to see this stuff. And they've come to the same realizations of me that like, oh shit, I've been so disconnected from my food.
Mhm.
And then obviously the
Mhm.
pandemic and everything that's happened the last 2 years have started to think about those things.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I just began to realize all of that and just continued on with all of that journey.
For anybody that doesn't know what regenerative farming is, can you just give a quick little tutorial?
Yeah. So first I would talk about conventional ag, that what we've been doing since America's been formed, and the issues. So when you think of nature, you think or realize just how diverse it is.
Mhm.
Conventionally, whenever you drive in the Midwest, for example, all you see is just fields and fields of corn, and that's it. So that's called monocropping, and that's very much of a disaster for us because it's anti-nature. And so there's all kinds of different aspects of conventional agriculture that is pretty much anti-nature, like all these chemical sprays. I'm sure you've heard of
Mhm.
Monsanto with
Of course.
Roundup, which is just this huge herbicide that I think they're up to $11 billion now. They've paid in lawsuits. They have thousands and thousands of cases that they're still going through because it causes so many different health issues like cancer
Mhm.
and other chronic diseases.
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and even like kids who have like severe autism spectrum disorder notice a great reduction in symptoms when going on a completely glyphosate-free diet.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it damages the gut lining so bad, it just destroys it.
because even like a side note with that, if you think about gluten and how that's been a huge issue in America now, and you hear people talking about how they went to Italy and they could eat so much bread and
Mm-hmm.
pasta and they felt amazing, they have glyphosate banned there. And so that definitely is a piece to the puzzle of why celiac and gluten intolerance has been such a rising thing since
Mm-hmm.
the introduction of sprays. Because if you look at the correlate, I mean, there's a strong correlation of whenever that started to really be a thing in our agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, conventionally there's a lot of things like that, and then also the feedlots and just really small confined areas for animals. regenerative agriculture is more aligned with nature to where it's not one size fits all for whatever farm or ranch and the land that you're stewarding. You need to really understand the native species and plants and everything that's surrounding that. But then it's also not really tilling the land, which really destroys the microbiology of soil. Because whenever you pick up a handful of soil, you can't really see what's going on. But there's so many microorganisms that need to be in a symbiotic relationship in order for the soil to really work, so you could get the grass to grow, so the animals could eat that, and so we could have that food. And same for all of the produce grown. Tilling destroys that. And so regenerative agriculture takes that out, takes chemical sprays out. It's not monocropping. You're actually adding diverse species, which is called cover cropping, which is becoming a much more mainstream thing. And then the last thing that's more common is rotating your animals, because again, with conventional agriculture, with these intensive feedlots, it's just in the confined area. You have all this other land that could be used for agriculture that's not being used. And so those are a lot of the key principles that I guess regenerative agriculture is really pushing for. And so, for example, the farm I was on, we just handpicked everything, never used any sprays, never tilled. We rotated the cows and the chickens and the turkeys pretty much every other day. And the food was just better than any food I've ever had from grocery stores. It was just incredible. And
we were eating like, it's funny because like chicken is one of the best examples of this, because if you eat chicken at like a super conventional restaurant like an Applebee's or something, it's like a huge chicken breast and it tastes somehow juicy. It's like you can't overcook this chicken because it's pumped with something. Like it's I made these really good crispy chicken thighs a few weeks ago from this like local farm in Texas, and we were eating it and we were like, does chicken usually taste like this? Like, this is the best chicken I've ever had. And so a lot of people, like, if you don't even believe it conceptually or scientifically, like, go find a good farm and get some chicken and be like, wow, this is actually delicious.
Well, so whenever I visited Jordan Hedberg last year, that first bite of beef I tried was literally life-changing. And that's when I knew I was in the right space, because I was 28 at the time and I realized all the food I'd eaten 28 years before that tasted nothing like this.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's just so surreal that that's just the reality of where we're at now. But that's why I have this Regenaissance apparel brand and podcast, is to really raise awareness to what's going on in our agriculture and our food system.
That's so cool. You know, it's so I lost my mom young to cancer. Oh, look who jumped up here. Thor.
It's my cat.
Oh my gosh. And he's ripping my stuff out. Hold on.
He wants to be a star. We need to get him. Can I get a cat-sized t-shirt for him, Ryan?
Oh
a little Regenaissance one.
Of course, he's going to get
one.
it all over my black shirt. But what I was going to say is, what you don't realize at the time that you're going through the horrific. Now, what you went through is way worse. My dad was the caretaker. We helped. We were at school and stuff. But what you don't realize is how unbelievably powerful the wind is beneath your wings because of them. And when you think about now, not only are you doing this, but you're doing this kind of in his name. And when you also like just kind of break down, like listening to you talk about what it's like, what ag is like, just regular, you see that it literally kills people, even young, healthy people. Mm-hmm. And then you look at, how misguided we all are with all of the different diets, because somebody's going to make money off of whatever it is that they're promoting. And it's just very refreshing for me. And that's why I'm constantly promoting the Beef Initiative, Holy Cow Beef, the Provision House, all of the places that, are doing the same thing that you're doing as far as really making people aware of it. I loved how you were talking about with Nolan, the fight against deliberate misinformation. That is a very noble thing, and I would love for you to share, like, what's the fronts? Like, what are the ways that you feel like you can see light as far as how we can make headway on fighting the disinformation?
The biggest thing is just there's so many people that I haven't talked to in years and years and years and years that have just been following me in social media and just messaging me about just questions and seeing everything I'm sharing. That gives me an insane amount of hope. And
Mm-hmm.
even just comparing to last year, because I've only known about regenerative agriculture and I've only been in the space for a little over a year. Just from that year, it's crazy to see the growth and um yeah, just how quickly it's growing. But on the thing that I'm trying to really do with my podcast is getting to the truth because there's also a lot of greenwashing going on,
Yeah.
especially with regenerative agriculture that I'm really not nervous about, but that's just like, for example, this Common Ground documentary that just came out was absolutely terrible. And I already felt really skeptical whenever I saw the trailer and how they're just pushing all of these celebrities with Jason Momoa, Donald Glover, Woody Harrelson,
It's
all these
always the
people.
same cast of
Woody
characters
Harrelson,
Yeah.
yeah,
too.
the guy that
Yeah.
married his
So
daughter. Like, oh, I
yeah.
care what he has to say about farming.
Yeah. Yeah. So Gabe Brown is obviously amazing and he's been huge in the space and he was part of that.
Mhm.
But the documentary is so hollow and it doesn't give the actual farmers and ranchers a voice at all. And so I see a lot of accounts on Instagram, for example, that are talking more about regenerative agriculture and pushing for it. And then I hear them talk and they have no clue what the hell they're talking about. And
Mhm.
so that's again why I'm really huge on this podcast I'm doing because I know some things about regenerative agriculture, but again, it's only been a year. I want to talk to the experts, the people that have were born and raised in this field, that have been
Right.
working in it their whole lives to where they're fifth, sixth generational farmers. And that's again,
Can you
oh, go
give
ahead.
examples of misinformation on that front, like some of the Instagram accounts? Like, what are you seeing people post that you just know to your core isn't right?
They just oversimplify how difficult
Okay.
agriculture is because they just, I would say, because I try to put myself in the lens of a conventional farmer trying to make the transition, and then you hear these people that have never even visited a farm or ranch, and they're just spewing regenerative agriculture is the way. But there's so much money that has to be whenever you're making this change, it's expensive. I
Right.
mean, agriculture, you don't make a
Mhm.
whole lot of money as a whole. That's why farming is becoming less and less, and it's becoming more centralized. And that's just my biggest thing. It's just becoming oversimplified and saying that everyone can do it. That's been the biggest issue I've seen on Instagram.
That's so cool. Um, I when everything started going down and I'm like, okay, if people are going to be concerned about food, this is a real thing that people could be afraid of, right? They've destroyed all of the fertilizing plants and things were blowing up and exploding and on fire and disappearing and where's it going? I started thinking of how do you solve that problem? And I had this vision of like if every God-fearing good church, the real churches, not the
Mhm.
whatever, most of them have land, most of them have a lot of people, they have a lot of volunteers, they could have cows, chickens, they could have gardens, they could have all kinds of stuff, and I think it would bring people back to that community, that feeling. But I do think people need to practice, and one of the things I was really excited about today is JB from I think it's 2S Ranch.
Mhm.
Yeah.
um
Mhm.
he's talking about actually having tours and bringing people in and showing people how to do it. And
Hmm.
have you talked to him at all about what his plans are, or do you know him very well?
So I reached out to see if he could join my podcast, but he was mentioning how with his hearing and whatnot, he would not be able to really do it. But I definitely want to talk to him more because I've only talked to him a little bit on the side on Twitter, but that's really cool he's doing that because that's what I really push for as well is just visiting, volunteering at a farm for one day. That's all it takes is one day of doing actual work to really make you really appreciate the food that you eat.
And how much more fun is it to eat when you do put in that labor? and when you wait and the patience, and yeah, it's just beautiful. And so tell me what, when you talk about regenerative renaissance and you have this new concept, tell us about how that was born and what you're doing with that.
Yeah, so it's Regenaissance, which I can't say that I came up with that. So it was my good friend Case Bradford came up with that. It takes
Oh.
regenerative and well, because a year ago we were actually going to do a podcast together called that. So it's funny how it still ended up using it. So it takes regenerative and renaissance. So we've talked about regenerative agriculture, but also our bodies are just really resilient and can regenerate itself.
Hmm.
But then also renaissance. So there's two things that I want to talk about for that. Liver Kings really exploded on the scene with liver, but then also just all these organs and nose to tail. And then also you see bone marrow and bone broth, all these things that used to really exist for a long time that didn't whenever I was growing up have now become more mainstream. And so I see this renaissance of going back to how we used to eat, but also a renaissance of agriculture and with bison, because that's why I was very intentional with using the bison as my logo, because they almost went extinct and now they're making a bigger resurgence in America, but they're also amazing for our land. I mean, when you think of the 1800s in America, the Great Plains, a
Mhm.
lot of that was because of bison. And so, yeah, just really wanted to hone in on that and how I really, I guess, got to the apparel brand because I was supposed to be on ranches right now. I'm actually was technically supposed to be in Italy right now farming, but I had my own health issues happen in January. And as I was recovering in Austin, I just had the idea for apparel because humans are tribal by nature. We can get really behind things that we really like, whether it's cool looking, but plus the what it stands for. I mean, when you think of Nike, that's what really made me think about that. And now that's obviously one of the biggest brands in the world. So I started looking up apparel in the agriculture space and realized there's nothing at all outside of farms and ranches that have their own brands.
Right.
But everything else looked like, if you remember like the Cabana like arcade game art style, that's what it reminds me of, like a lot of
Yeah.
the agriculture clothes. So yes, so I wanted to make something cool looking and have those values that we've been talking about behind it all.
Mhm.
Plus, my backstory definitely, because as you're saying, with wanting to live through my brother, I mean that's the reason why I do everything. Is I don't recommend or I don't wish what I've gone through upon anybody on this world. Um, so yeah, I really wanted to see about raising awareness and educating through this brand. Was able to fortunately find Farm Fresh, which is the t-shirts that I sell because it's organic cotton. I agree, it's the softest shirts I've ever owned, which is why
So soft.
I was so
Like at
thrilled
the end
whenever I
of the
found
day,
them.
like taking like a long hot shower and like climbing into like clean sheets and like putting on my little Renaissance t-shirt. I'm like, this is great. This is so
I
I
know
mean,
nice.
that's
it's so cool.
All a
She
girl
has a
needs.
huge one. There's one that she has that's
I know.
like
I need to get
triple X
more.
large. Do you have some to show people?
yeah. So the one behind me, I can get it.
Oh yeah,
I
okay.
also don't know if anyone can see, but the hat he's wearing says "Make milk raw
Raw
again."
again.
Mhm.
Is that one of his too?
Yeah. So he
Okay.
sells t-shirts, shorts, hats.
Oh yeah, cool.
So I need to buy some shorts too.
Oh my
So
gosh, I love the
It's
buffalo. The
awesome.
bison is awesome.
so it's kind of hard to see, but that's the gist of it. And it comes in three colors. But I also have a shirt outside of this too that's tagline Raw is Law. And that's just raising awareness and educating about raw milk. So that's there's just so many
Raw
things of
is law. Is that what you said?
yeah.
And make milk raw again. Well, Carly and I, that's all we have is raw goat milk. We think it's
Mhm.
literally saved my dad from dying. And
Literally.
he was stage 4 cancer. And for anyone that doesn't know what stage 4 means, stage 4 means that the cancer moved from one place to sometimes one, other times many other places. And so it basically means it's really infiltrated your system. And my dad was on death's door. And I believe in my heart of hearts that the raw goat milk is one of the main things that's allowed him to gain weight when he was down to 130
Mhm,
pounds.
mhm.
And then also, it's the only thing he likes on his little non cancer. I mean, when you're on a diet like his, it's really the sweetest and best thing that he has to look forward to. So it is really impressive what it has done in his life.
That's awesome. And I mean, the gaining weight portion is huge because I remember my brother's probably down to, I mean, there's so many times where I thought, all right, this is the end because he was just not gaining any weight and he was weighing
Mhm.
115 pounds. It was just, he was literally skin and bones.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's tough too. One of the things that I think is great is that you can use it whether you choose to do chemotherapy and radiation, which I would never do, but it's a good supplement. But then if you choose not to, you probably aren't throwing it up as much.
Yeah, no, I didn't know obviously anything at the time of
Right,
that about cancer, any of that, because I definitely wouldn't have used chemo either.
right.
It was
And
especially after just watching what it did to him.
And didn't you
Mhm.
cure yourself of what you had going on health wise because of Twitter? Also, like you went down the doctor road several times, and then you ended up. I couldn't
Twitter
believe it.
University, Twitter doctor,
Twitter.
Twitter friends. What else? Twitter, my wardrobe, my job. Like, if my account gets suspended, my whole life is gonna fall apart.
Oh, that's good,
But
Car.
yes, so yeah, I've had really bad health issues dating back to when I was this caretaker because obviously I was high stress, not
Oh
eating at
gosh,
all.
yeah.
I
Or
probably
stress
averaged three
eating.
hours of sleep. Well, I wasn't eating at all. So the only
Oh.
reason why I would eat during that was I would smoke so much weed that it would force me to eat because
Oh.
Mhm.
it would be 5 or 6 p.m. and I hadn't eaten at all. Because by the time when he passed away and I came back to Austin, I weighed 124 pounds.
Oh my gosh, that was like my dad,
Yeah,
130. That you were. How tall are you?
5'10".
Okay, you and my dad are the same. So you were even thinner than him. And he literally looked like he was going to die.
Yeah, it was really bad shape. So another reason why I have this brand is so you don't rely on healthcare because they will fail you. And it's not,
Mhm.
I'm not going to say it's intentional, but they will fail you because I can give so many examples of the last 3 years. But for me personally, I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars the last 2 years for them to give me zero answers. And I went to Twitter and that actually gave me all the answers. Not a single doctor recommended me getting a blood panel test for vitamin mineral content or
Mhm.
thyroid. And
That part blew me away.
those two tests answered everything because I had so many deficiencies in some vitamins and minerals, but then I discovered I had Hashimoto's, which explained
Mhm.
why I've been so destroyed uh
Mhm.
physically because
Mhm.
I still haven't healed that naturally. I'm in the process of doing all of that.
Right.
Um,
And
but
Hashimoto's is
that's
a
actually
autoimmune, right?
yeah, and I think that's how I
Yeah.
found you, Carlisle, was you posted about thyroid books.
Yeah.
I'm serious because I think I remember messaging you about that. That's
Yeah,
funny.
it was
And like,
true.
and I was watching a video yesterday of this guy that did a TED talk on thyroid, and he was saying that Hashimoto's, all these other things, they're looking at some 20% marker to make the decision. When he was saying B1 and all of these other, like all the
Mhm.
different B vitamins were more important than that, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
But Carly got me started on it too.
No, I wish like I'm terrified of needles. I've only gotten one blood test in my entire life. And so
Holy
I,
smokes.
I call it girl science. And so we're just operating on 100% girl science over here. Hopefully everything's going well. But I wish I would have gotten like a comprehensive blood panel done like 2 years ago versus now to have just seen the differences because I feel like I'm functioning only on my own observations. But I will say one of the easiest ways to measure thyroid health without spending like $300 on a blood test, because a doctor's only going to test TSH and you want T3, T4, reverse T3, you want the whole thing, is your body temperature, especially your waking body temperature or your body temperature after you eat a meal. And you can look up like you want it to be higher. Like the best I think is like 98.6. And if you're a woman and you're still in your menstruating years, your temperature will fluctuate because and you're in your luteal phase, that's when you're progesterone dominant, and progesterone is an anti-stress hormone basically, and it's going to up your metabolism, which is why you get hungrier right before your period, but it's also going to up your body temperature. So if you don't want to spend $100 on getting blood work done and you feel like like your, I think it's pulse rate and temperature.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a good measure. I'm like, that's the most science I've done. So, but it's crazy. Like I wish someone would have told me to check my thyroid when I was really tired and out of it all the time. Like there
Yeah,
are
we didn't
small signs
know.
like your hands and feet being really cold and a lot of hair falling out and your skin and nails being really brittle and dry, but it's really hard to say. And I think that's like the thyroid is responsible for so many things and can literally dictate how we feel and even our emotions. And so it's definitely something important to get checked.
And so what's your weight at now? You look like you gained
Uh,
some.
yeah, no, I'm not 120. I would say like 165.
Oh, good. Yeah, you're outdoing my dad now. You were underdoing him and now you're outdoing him. He's 160, which is amazing.
Yeah,
He's done
definitely.
that since April. He's gained all that weight. He's probably actually more than 160 now, but just steadily rising, and it's just so awesome to see. And so, tell us about the cotton, and tell us about why you chose that. You guys touched on it a little bit when we first started, but I think it's a really important piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So once I got the idea for apparel, I started researching on all of that and quickly realized, like all other industries, the apparel industry is really destroyed, especially in America, because I think it was in the 70s, we started outsourcing everything for cheaper labor, for cheaper costs. So it was all to Asia. And then once polyester and all these synthetic fibers came onto the scene, because I think it's around 55% of all of our clothes are synthetic fibers because it's cheaply made, more, I guess, quote unquote, durable. You can stretch your clothes. There's a lot of reasons why they did all that. But then I started looking into how toxic all that was. And I didn't realize that polyester is derived from petroleum oil. And so that was mind boggling just to watch the process of polyester being made. I
Right.
knew right away that if I want to do this, I want to do this the right way. And I'm very, it's funny because I took Chinese for 3 years and I'm very anti-China with business,
So you like,
especially
I
with
took
clothes.
it just so I could cuss them out.
That's funny. So yeah, then I realized, yeah, I just want to do this the right way. And so there were a lot of challenges with all that, trying to get the price point correct,
Mm-hmm.
paired with it actually looks good and feels good, paired with the color, because the main color scheme that showed with the mustard and maroon, I for sure was not going to. I was going to make sure I had that because I thought that looked the best out of everything, and everyone's feedback loved it. And
It's
so,
very Spartan.
yeah, so that's actually why I mean that was the for sure. But then I only found a couple of American source four shirts because I had the shirts, and that's what I was going to start with. I was fortunate enough to find Farm Fresh. They're American made. It's
That's
all
so
organic
cool.
cotton, and the shirts were super soft. They looked great, and they did not use toxic ink. It's algae based, and so
Oh,
it
cool.
was all great. Yeah, so I got really lucky with all that, and the price point was amazing because I'd find some shirts or shorts, but then I was doing the math and have to be selling them for $100+ and I don't want that. That's not
Right.
my aim of the business. And so, yeah, I went with that and very happy. But that's the unfortunate thing is that's the only clothes I have that's organic. The hats and shorts are just 100% cotton. And so I've taken levels to what I'm trying to do. The
Right.
first thing is natural fibers. Everything I will sell is all natural fibers. The second thing is fully American made because right now
Nice.
the shorts, the shorts and shirts are American made, but the hats are 100% cotton, but they're imported from Vietnam. The reason why I have that is because I'm a one man show and the
Yeah.
logistics, everything was starting to become a nightmare because the shirts um, are printed in house. So everything is just there and shipped to me. The shorts I had are from a different manufacturer that I have to have shipped to Austin and then to a local print
Then
shop.
printed.
Yeah. And so, yeah, if I was going to do hats, then I was going to be a third one. It was just going to be way too much. So fortunately, Farm Fresh has hats. And then last will be American made organic, but that
Right.
will be
Right.
years away because with cotton, for example, for all of the organic cotton, it's pretty much made in India, China, and Turkey. They take up
Mm-hmm.
most of the percentage. US is less than 3% of the global organic cotton production.
Dang.
And so yeah, just the economics of it all, it's such a mess. And so I'm trying to educate on that because I've gotten a lot of comments about the pricing and not being organic. It's really interesting to hear from the consumer side of things.
Yeah. Well, no matter what you do, they won't be happy.
No, definitely
I
not.
mean, when you work with the public, sometimes it's kind of you have to like love what you're doing and stay the course, stay focused and take the feedback. I mean, I still do. Like if somebody's polite about criticism, I like it. I like
Yeah.
being coached. But if they're rude, I just block them.
Well,
Um,
I laugh because it's hilarious. I can know off right away. They've never started business. They don't know what they're
yeah.
talking
Right.
about. They're just virtue signaling.
Mhm.
Oh, I bet there's a lot of that. People are very,
Yeah.
very much into that these days. Okay, so this person on the chat said a hemp cotton blend might be something more durable. And I was just curious if you've looked into that because that sounds like a good option. But I don't know. So,
Definitely. So since I made a pivot a little bit to because I didn't start whenever I started this brand, I launched on May 28th and it was just apparel. But then last month I added this podcast. So I've foregone releasing any new apparel for the time being to really focus in on this podcast. But next
right.
year, I mean, I want to do hemp and wool because the next thing I was going to do were wool beanies. So there's a lot of fall and winter clothes that I want to do next year, and I want to use hemp for sure.
That's a great idea.
That is a great idea.
I feel like natural fibers. This is girl science again. I don't. Don't if it's not true, don't don't call me out. But I feel like natural fibers are really great at protecting against like EMFs. Like I'm like I feel like if I wore a wool hat, it would keep my brain from being radiated.
It
Don't
might
know if
be
that's
interesting
true, but
to test. I mean, if you throw some copper threads in there with it, for sure that would probably be true.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
So, wow, that's so cool. I've always wanted to have I've always wanted to have just specific pieces that I sold, whether it be t-shirts or like really what I've always wanted to do is a sweatshirt dress, like all the way down sweatshirt dress. I've always wanted to do that. It just I think it's so fun, but it's got to be overwhelming. It's shipping and returns and I mean all the stuff.
yeah. It is a lot. I mean, Carlisle saw my picture yesterday. My living room is just boxes, and it's literally that's all it is. My boxes and tables of stuff.
Yeah. Lots of folded gear.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what's the most popular thing? What are people buying?
I would say the OG Renaissance with the mustard, but
Mhm.
then also the Raw's Law. That's been
Raw's
another
Law.
amazing thing. Yeah,
And
the
that's a
feedback for
t-shirt
everything's
or all of them, all three of the so the Regenaissance, the Make Milk Rogan, and the Raw's Law are all yours.
yeah. So the Make Milk Raw again are just hats. Those aren't
Okay.
shirts, but then
Okay.
Raw's Law is shirt and not a hat. I know that's kind of confusing, but it was hard to make a cool looking Raw is Law on a hat, so went with this one. But the
Yeah.
feedback's been incredible. Everyone that's bought things, the reviews have been insane. I've been really thrilled with all of
Oh,
that
I'm
to
so
where,
happy for you.
thank you.
And I did put in the chat your link. I hope it's it because I didn't double
No, it
check.
is. I checked. Don't
Okay,
worry.
all right. The
Yeah. We'll put it in the show
renaissance.com.
notes too.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I think I already did. No, I didn't. I
Okay.
didn't do it yet. And then also tell people, I mean, this is like an amazing Christmas present, right? Or stocking
Hmm.
stuffer or whatever. Because
Totally.
anyone that really, if you have someone in your family that loves purity or loves, you know, it's a very affordable item
hmm
to get them, and it's very personal, especially because it's literally organic, you know, cotton or
hmm
at
I got one
best.
for my dad and he loves it.
Oh yeah.
He wears it all the time.
And Dane had his
Heck
on
yeah.
the other day. You
Yeah, I
brought
got
one
one
for
for my
Dane.
brother too. Yeah. I got the whole family one.
That's awesome.
Not me.
It's true.
Dang.
I was like,
This is your last time you're doing this talk.
I already told Ryan he couldn't come on unless I got a t-shirt.
well, I'm
tip
down
him.
here, so
I'll
I'll
give him a
intercept
big
your
tip
order.
though about the price of
Yeah.
a t-shirt.
I know. I need to. I like their. I need to buy some of the women's shorts as well.
Look at that. You got
Especially
two
because
new
working
customers.
out, like I don't know if we we touched on that, but working out in something like polyester because you're sweating and it's getting hot and your skin's so much more vulnerable when it's sweating, like even just buying like a t-shirt and a pair of shorts that are cotton is great to work out in as well.
I mean, especially for men, that was the biggest thing to why I stopped wearing polyester shorts was whenever it's heated up
Mm-hmm.
because I'm always in saunas and outside that there's a strong link between that and testicular cancer and just
Mm-hmm.
dropped fertility because of that. And so,
Totally.
yeah, there's a lot of issues with all that.
It's kind of like putting plastic in a microwave.
Yeah, that's actually that's so true.
Literally, yeah.
Is a very similar concept. And so, as far as like what you would love for people to know, anything from where to find you to what your mission is to how to help you, how to collaborate with you, how to get on your podcast. Give us all the information on how somebody would go about that.
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, just the Regenaissance or underscore Regenaissance. I think those are the two. My personal account's just Regenaissance Man. And you can always DM, especially if you know people in the ag space that would you think could be really great guests on my podcast. Because again, that's my biggest focus right now. So my overarching mission, it's not even, I mean, it's directly related to agriculture, but my overarching mission is breaking the generational chain on health and nutrition because we pass down all of that information to your kids and pairing that with
Mm-hmm.
again getting more involved with farmers markets and just a nearby farm and ranch, especially as a family. That's such an awesome thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
The farm I worked on, they had kids that were 5, 3, and I think a brand newborn, and just seeing how they were together and the kids just hands on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, I highly recommend doing that. Outside of that, the podcast is just called the Regenaissance Podcast. That's on YouTube,
Okay.
Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
All right, so I'll make sure that that's all in the description too, so everybody can find out about it. I just think it's awesome. I know that your mom and your brother are looking down and they're so proud of
I
you. It's just awesome. And it's just fun to see
appreciate that.
somebody
Mm-hmm.
come from like I don't know. I just love when somebody is so beaten down and it through that beat down, they find their way, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
um a strange response sometimes, you know. A lot of times people have to come out of it with drugs or they come out of it with, you
Mm-hmm.
know, a practitioner, but you just like you get hooked up with people on Twitter with like-minded stuff and then you were able to basically heal yourself and start a business.
I mean,
I
it's
have
a
a
very
question regarding that too,
yeah.
because what do you think, was there any turning point in terms of your process of grief or one thing that really helps? Like what was been the number one thing that helped you through grief?
I started thinking long term and realizing because after my brother died, I was just escaping with weed really bad
Mm-hmm.
at night. Like I wouldn't smoke during the day, but from about 5 p.m. until I would sleep probably around 5 or 6 a.m., I was just blazed out of my mind, just numbing myself because I did not want to think
Mm-hmm.
about anything. But then I would think about the people I've met in my life, whether it be my age or older, that are alcoholics or drug addicts. A lot of that is escaping and never facing those internal demons. And then
Mm-hmm.
I thought about I want a family myself. If I want to be the best man, not just for myself, my wife and kids, I gotta figure this shit out. And so that was definitely the biggest turning point was that plus I just went through 6 months of hell and my brother passed away. I'm just gonna be pissing on his grave if I don't do anything.
I
Mm-hmm.
agree.
Um, and then also the last thing, it's my actually my pinned tweet on my personal Twitter account. I had loved life so much before all this. There's so much I'd loved
Mm-hmm.
about life. I did not want to give that up. That's why I love nature and
Mm-hmm.
why I want people to also go out in nature because I don't know how to explain it other than it's the most healing thing, like nature bath. It's just
Yep.
yeah. So I just knew I would get to that thing. I don't know. I didn't know how long that would take, but I knew I would eventually get there. And so yeah, now we're here.
So what was the funnest thing that would happen on the farm? I know the farms were mostly like a lot of work and I know you were probably exhausted because you were also sick, but
Yeah.
what were the things that you just went, "Oh my gosh, like when I bite into this or when I drink this," or like what were the things that you really like felt that gratification from the regenerative farming?
cooking my own food and making um there's so many different types of squash that I'd never seen or heard of, like blue Hubbards. And so have you ever heard of that?
I
It's just this
haven't.
giant, it's a giant, like 20-pound blue, it looks like a dinosaur egg. Amazing
Wow.
squash. But so
Oh.
just experimenting, trying new things because I'd never
It's
cooked a
actually
whole lot.
blue.
Yeah, it's
I
huge.
Oh, it's
must
beautiful.
I must search this. That's so cool.
But yeah,
I'm
so just
so glad I
experimenting
asked.
with all of these different foods. And then the second thing was just being outside. It was so
Yeah.
peaceful. Just all you hear is nature, and
Hmm.
you're really, really deeply connected to the world. It felt like that. And so those two things for sure, especially with just my case, because it would put me at ease with everything and then be still grateful for everything despite what I'd gone through.
Right. And so do you see, so anyone that has a daughter in Orion's age range that's single, you need to
Oh
have her
gosh.
watch the show or send it to her. This is a very amazing man. He takes care of people when they're sick. He overcomes difficulties. I mean, this is your basic hero here. And so I'm just going to do a quick matchmaking at the end of this.
She
Is that
does this
okay?
everywhere. We'll literally like be driving through a Starbucks and the barista's cute. She's like, "Are you single? I have a son." And I'm like, "She is trying to make you a latte. Leave her alone."
That's hilarious.
Don't distract her.
Don't
I
let
do.
her matchmake for you.
Hey, you just never know. I literally set up one of my friends with like literally a guy I hardly knew, but I knew one of his friends and I knew he was so stellar that he had to be, because you know, birds of a feather, you know, flock together. And she's so amazing. And this was like 5 years ago, and now they're getting married, and I'm so excited. It's the first time I've ever like connected people that it
So you have a
actually
hundred
worked.
percent success rate. Just don't look into
I
the
mean,
stats too hard.
so far. And so tell your future wife, tell her what your dreams are. Like, do you want to just keep growing the apparel company? Do you want to eventually have your own regenerative farm? Do you want to be a rancher? Do you want to like go to Italy and be a farmer? Like, what's your plan?
Yeah, so it depends where this brand takes me, but I definitely want to start my own ranch and raise my family on a ranch long term.
Yeah. So you like the ranch idea more than the farm idea.
Yeah, I just want a bison ranch. Like that's all I care about.
Yeah. You ever seen how big they are?
Yeah, they are so awesome. I'm so obsessed with bison, and so I'd be really pissed if I ended up not doing that.
Well, you must.
Mhm.
We'll have to get a girl that's not intimidated by very, very large animals.
Women are good at communicating with animals. It's a part of the whole girl science thing.
Do you speak bison?
I'm sure I
Just
could if I needed to. I just feel like animals that are generally aggressive wouldn't harm me. You know, like I feel like I have a good repertoire with wildlife.
I hope you don't say that to a bison.
No, I would never say that to a person.
They are insane to see in person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I don't think I've ever seen one in person. I've only ever seen like moose or elk or I don't think I've
You
ever
mean
seen a
out in the
bison in
wild? I
person.
mean, you've seen them
Yeah.
behind a fence all over Texas.
Right, yeah.
Got it. I was like, wait, what is she talking about? And so that reminds me, is it Jacob Wolke that's on Twitter? Doesn't he have bison in Australia, or is his
No,
cattle?
his are cattle. He
Oh,
actually was just on my
there's
podcast
somebody that has bison. Who is it? Is
in
it Peanut?
Australia.
No, not in Australia. I was thinking
Okay.
of as
I was
Jacob.
like,
Is there a Peanut somebody? Oh well.
peanuts.
I forgot, but I follow all of these ranchers. I love following them. I love watching all of the animals and I love seeing nature. And I just live vicariously through them because I personally don't want to take care of all the animals. I just like looking at them.
Yeah, she does. The other day, she was on her Twitter and she was like, "Oh, all these cute guys keep following me," and I was like, "Oh, who?" And she started listing like a bunch of my
They're
mutuals,
all
and I'm
your
like,
friends.
"I would message them all and be like, leave my mom alone."
I was
Don't play with
excited.
my
I like
mom.
it. I want all the cute boys. I want a whole cute boy posse following me. I'm all for it. Oh, that's so fun. Well, thank you so much for coming. Do you have any last words or anything that you'd like to share to kind of send out into the world before we go?
Well, yeah, thank you for having me. This was great.
My
I
pleasure.
guess the last thing I'm just going to reiterate again is to visit a local ranch and farm
Oh, yeah.
and just have a conversation with them. They're more than welcome to have you. They would love to have your help, and they are super passionate about what they do in the land that they steward. And so, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
And then I have something like I think that people complain about the expense of the food. And I have a few things that I look at women that spend a fortune on bags, or there's guys I know that, you know, spend hundreds of dollars on one bottle of wine. Even people that don't have money buy Starbucks. What are some things that you would say? Like, do you have any friends that are able to maintain the raw and the really high end meat life that don't make very much money?
It's a good question. I would say, because this is one of those things too, there's just a lot of levels to it because conventional eggs, which are horrible conditions for the chickens, are still better than just eating fast food.
Hmm.
So you can
Hmm.
still just eat really cheap eggs and beef and chicken that's still overall in the big picture is not the healthiest, but still a lot healthier than what you'd
Sure.
probably previously be eating. So
Hmm.
I'd say take that into account. Is just there's so many levels to all of that. Obviously, you want the grass-fed, grass-finished beef and bison and all these other lean meats, but just still eating those cheaper cuts will still you'll still be fine.
Car, do you have any suggestions for people that are trying to eat really healthy, but on a budget?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and like, especially because things like bison or cows, they have four stomachs. And so, like, even if it's just all you can afford is ground beef, I think that's a great place to start. Because
Oh, okay.
fat,
Yeah, that's
protein,
true. That's
like,
a
and
good
that's
point.
usually pretty cheap and it's better. It would be more nutritious than something like chicken, and there's less risk in getting beef that's not high quality than chicken that's not high quality.
And I think a lot of people overlook sardines. I love them.
Oh, yeah.
But they're really not that expensive compared to some of the other things, and they're very nutrient dense.
Very. That's a good point.
They are
Hmm.
just like they're
They're high
what are
in
they?
silica and vitamin D.
Well, they're also high in smell, and I think that's the problem. But
There is no, this is funny story. There was one time that when I was like 17 years old, I was in high school. My mom went through like my closet or one of my bags when I was gone one time. And you'd think that if you're like 17, your mom's gonna find like drugs or alcohol in your closet. And she found like a stack of can of sardines. She was like, what is going on? And I was like, those are my emergency sleepover sardines in case I'm at a sleepover and they don't have food I want to eat. And then I
That
get a
is
can of
awesome.
sardines.
she was always very weird. But she's turned out wonderful, still weird, but in all the good ways. You're like a little miracle. So I'm also advertising for her. No, I'm kidding.
No advertising.
She gets mad at me if I match make on her, so I can't do it. Anyway, thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you, Carlisle. And
Oh
for
yeah,
any,
and go buy his t-shirts because I'm serious. I'm so picky about fibers. I get really weird about the clothes I wear. If
yes,
something is even slightly scratchy, slightly uncomfortable, I have to take it off. I will sleep in his t-shirt literally almost every single night. It's my favorite thing. I want to buy more. I want to get a whole little closet so I have enough workout clothes and stuff. So go buy his t-shirts, support a good company, a good cause, and a good person.
yeah, and that's I'm always about the family owned or the small
Mm-hmm.
businessman or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I just think it's awesome. And so I also wanted to let everybody know I will be back here live at 6 p.m. Central with Jerry Marzinski, and a lot of you love him. So I was just letting you know ahead of time. He is a therapist that has figured out that he believes that there's parasites that have created schizophrenia, and he also worked in a prison. And we're going to focus in on just talking about mental health in the prison system. He's no longer in it, but he's got a really great take on it. So I'm excited to have that conversation later tonight. So I hope to see everybody then. Bye, everyone.